Hey everybody, Dr. Will Falconer here. Welcome, welcome. We're talking pet food enhancements tonight. Some pretty easy things you can do that are small but have a big impact on how your animal does with whatever you're feeding. Those of you who are, doing all balanced raw food and that's 100% of your food, this probably isn't going to apply as much, but you may still have some fun with the magic I'm going to show you. We're going to start with a magic trick. As fun as that sounds. A little fun with science. Amy, welcome. Yes, we are live. I am going to start this because it takes some time to show the whole magic coming out. So this is a bag of, correct, rolled oats. Welcome, Gail. Welcome, Wanda. This is a glass jar. I'm going to put some oats in the jar with a clean spoon. And part of this magic trick is something I used to do regularly on the lecture circuit when I went out to talk to pet clubs and that sort of thing. So I got some oats in the jar, and I'm going to add to that some hot water from a kettle. About enough to make, you know how you can kind of make oatmeal in a pinch if you just add enough water to soak the oats? That's what we're going to do. I'm going to set that aside, oats in warm water. I'm going to set that aside and let it thicken. And not organic, not gluten-free, but we're not going to eat them. This is just for demo, so don't get scared. So while that's soaking, that's the first part of the magic trick, is just letting the oats soak. And then I'm going to show you something pretty cool that will transform that. One very small input that will transform that oat business into something very different. So let's talk about enhancing pet food a little bit. And while we do, let me remind you that if you know anybody with pets who's feeding, probably putting food in the dish, like this page and share it with them so they can join us as well. You know, when I grew up, I had one dog at a time till I went off to vet school and didn't have time to care for dogs while I studied. But what we fed them was Purina dog chow. I think my dad was impressed with the label or something. I mean, there wasn't a whole lot of choices out there. There wasn't near like there was now. So from the time I was probably 7 or 9 up until I went off to vet school, there was one dog in the house, generation after generation of dog. And that's what we fed them. And they did okay. The Basset Hound got pretty stove up with arthritis in later years. But that's all we knew. So we're going to talk about ways to enhance food tonight, and you guys feel free to chime in with some things that you've found. Primarily what I'm talking about is if you haven't made the leap to all raw food, which is the gold standard for a carnivore, which is what your dog is, or your cat, we can start with a really good quality kibble and enhance it. So a couple of things about kibble that we want to pay attention to. There are a couple things in there that we wish were not. One of them revolves around toxic ingredients. Those are things like byproducts, preservatives that keep the food on the shelf for years without spoiling. So why preservatives? Well, think about this. If we believe the label that says this is a whole meal in this bag, how about if we take a plate of your food and we put it in a paper bag and come back to it a month later? What will that look like? That's going to be a pretty horrible mess, isn't it? It's going to be all moldy. It's probably going to be kind of in a slurry because the molds have digested it. And yet, if we believe these labels, they're 100% nutritionally complete food, and it's all in a bag, and it sits on a shelf for months, years, without turning moldy. Why is that? It's preserved with something. So those preservatives are often toxic ingredients, things like BHA and BHT, and this one called ethoxyquin, which isn't allowed in human food but is commonly in pet food. And the byproducts means everything from the meat world that's unfit for humans to eat. So the 4D meats, dead, diseased, dying, or disabled. Another class of ingredients that we wish wasn't there when we want to keep a dog or a cat healthy is something to stick those chunks together. And that is usually starch of one kind or another. whether it's grain or it's grain-free, there's some kind of starch to get that meat protein to stick into a chunk. So when we're feeding starch, it means we're pushing carbs at that carnivore. And while it's been borne out that yes, dogs can digest starch, I say, so what? That's not a good thing for them. And just like us eating too many carbs, it can make them fat. It can throw their blood sugar into topsy-turvy land. When you're eating lots of carbs, your blood sugar is unstable. It's dropping and rising as you eat and fast. Not a good thing, especially for a carnivore. And they didn't evolve to eat lots of carbs. They would eat prey. That's who the relative is. That's the wolf. So those things we wish weren't there. And then there's something important that's missing. Let's see how our oats are doing. Now here they are. So that's about 5 minutes in. There's a little bit of water in there. I'm going to pour the excess water out and just show you what my oats are like right now. So that's just a little bit of leftover water, but basically I'm holding the jar upside down and those oats are sticking. So they've made some chemical bonds, right? That's just oats and water. And they're not going anywhere because they're bound together with their chemical bonds. So let's not spill on the keyboard there, Dr. Falconer. Hang on. There we go. Okay. So now what I'm going to do, the trick proceeds, is I've got some enzymes. You can use any kind of enzymes for this trick. I'm going to get a capsule out. Capsule of enzymes. I'm going to take my jar of oats and I'm going to drop about a half a capsule in. This is just a powder. I'm going to open the capsule and I'll show you this part. Just going to drop some of the enzyme powder into the oats. Okay, about a half a capsule's worth. We'll go a little more. And then I'm going to stir that up. So I got a little powder in the bottom of these wet oats. I'm going to stir it up so the enzymes will mix all through there. You with me? Remember, I turned this thing upside down. It could stick upside down because it was thick. And now we're stirring in the enzymes. And I'm going to let this sit while we go on about ways to enhance your pet food. And we're going to see something pretty remarkable in a very short time. So warm water, oats, and enzymes. So what's a way that we can do some enhancement? One is real simple. I love this one. If you've got a healthy kibble and you haven't made the leap to raw yet, you can crack a raw egg over that kibble. We used to do this even when we were feeding Purina as a kid, and my parents were okay with it. They didn't think anything about it. It was usually he got leftover gravy or something, and he loved that. But a raw egg, especially an organic, pasture-raised, good stuff egg that's got one of those yolks that stands up and is golden and beams at you, now we're talking. That enhances the missing ingredient, which is life. All of these kibbles, in addition to having something we don't want, the byproducts and the preservatives, you can say they're cooked to death. Lots of temperature, at least 350 degrees to shoot them through a cannon, so to speak, shoot them through a die. It's a slurry of meat cooked to a high temperature and then popped through a die, which is like a little steel hole, and out comes a chunk. And then they have to dry that chunk for usually 20, 30 minutes at more temperature. So any life that was in that food gets wiped out. One of those life ingredients is called enzymes. That's why we're doing this little magic trick with the enzymes and the oats, to show you what a difference that can make. So let's give it a stir and see how we're doing. Yeah, nothing much to see yet, but we're going to give it some time. It's getting a little wetter though. See that? It's not probably something I want to turn upside down just now. We're going to let that work. Enzymes, it turns out, are present in all raw food. So that egg that you just dropped on your cooked kibble, that's got enzymes in it, enough to digest the egg. If you take a chunk of hamburger that's raw, There's enzymes in that hamburger, just enough to digest that hamburger. And the advantage of having enzymes present in food is it obviates your dog's need to dump in his own digestive enzymes to digest that food. In other words, if you're feeding raw food with enzymes intact, it's a whole lot less burden for your dog or cat to digest that food. So enzymes, it turns out, are wiped out at about 118 degrees. Pretty low temperature. You know, that's like a hot day in India. 118 degrees, the enzymes in raw food are wiped out. We cook these foods to make kibbles at 350 quite often. So they're dead. Another thing that's missing in the life category is this thing called probiotics. You've heard this term, right? So it turns out when a wolf, ancestor of your dog, eats prey, they are getting some probiotics from the gut. Even if they're just tearing the gut and kind of throwing most of it away, shaking it on the ground, they're getting some live bacteria from the digestive content of that gut from the prey animal. And we can add probiotics in and make a difference. So we got starch, we got toxic ingredients, and we got a missing ingredient, which is life. And we're going to add some life by adding that raw egg or adding a chunk of hamburger. And if we've got somebody who's borderline on weight, we can take away an equal amount of that kibble to what we've added in the raw stuff. And if we keep the balance even 50-50, raw additions to the healthy kibble, do your label detective work, you've still got a good balance. So let's see how we're doing on the magic trick here. We're getting soupier now. We got this oatmeal that I could hold upside down before, and now it's going to pour out in liquid. Ew, better watch out or my keyboard's going to get hit. And I'm going to keep that going while we're talking, but it's getting very liquid. So what once was something I could turn upside down and it would stick, now the bonds are being broken by that little bitty addition of enzymes. Half a capsule, not much. So that's pretty cool, and it's going to get more liquid as time goes by. In fact, I did one earlier. Let's see what that one looks like. Oh yeah, so here's one I did earlier, and this has gone about an hour, same mix, but this is really, really pourable. So let me see if I can show you how wet this is. Yeah, that is like liquid coming out, and that was also something I could hold upside down. So is that cool or what? It's kind of magic. It's food magic, right? So that's what enzymes do for our eaters, the dog or the cat who's being fed food. If they're getting a kibble and you haven't made the jump to raw that's full of enzymes, you can add enzymes. And the ideal is find one product that's got both enzymes and probiotics in the same shaker can. And just shake the stuff on before you offer the food. In fact, the people who sold enzymes way back years ago, I don't know if they're still in the market or not, was called Prozyme, back when I got started on holistic medicine in the 90s. And Prozyme would say, you know, you can feed up to 25% less food when you're shaking on a spoonful of our enzymes because your animal is able to absorb more of that food and make use of more of that food. Okay? So that's the magic trick of the day. And the takeaway is enzymes are important. They help break down food, make it easier to digest, easier to absorb the smaller particles. And we make our own, but if we don't have to make our own to digest food because they're already there, less burden on us, less burden on our dogs. All right, let's see what you guys are saying in here. Melinda says, my biggest hurdle is the raw meaty bones. One of our Westies swallowed a chicken bone that was a wee bit large and then vomited it up. Yeah, that's okay. Don't be scared of that. You know, the thing that I kind of frame this against is I was raised, like most vets, to say never ever feed bones to your pets. That's what we were all schooled in. And so I carried that party line forward into practice until enough people said to me, you know, Dr. Falconer, I hate to tell you, but Our family's been feeding bones to our dogs for years. They were talking about cooked bones even. And we've never had an issue. And I thought back to my childhood, and we would give our dogs steak bones after we ate the steak, and they never had a problem either. So I backed off of my vet school stance and said, bones are okay. The wolf would sure eat them. They don't eat a carcass without eating some of the bone. They're a great source of calcium. They're a great toothbrush, the best toothbrush in the world. And they are very digestible if they're raw. And if you have concerns, Melinda, just hang on to that bone until your dog gets used to kind of settling in and gnawing it out of your hand. And then think about giving a little bigger bone so things take a little more work. So a good size for a little Chihuahua might be a chicken wing. And a good size for a great big dog like a Great Dane might be a femur bone from a calf cut longitudinally. So there's some challenge there. They're going to hold it in their paws and they're going to gnaw and get into that kind of altered state that can happen when they're getting, the endorphins rolling. I think it really settles them down. They're really happy when they're chewing a bone. So try that if you're afraid of eating too fast. Janet says, for the people here who are just learning, the difference in my dogs feeding homemade food is phenomenal. Thank you, Janet. The hair, eyes, alertness, skin, weight, so amazing. I hear stories like this all the time, and it does make a huge difference. So listen to the people who've gone before you if you haven't made the leap yet. I've got some comments, and at least a handful of them are saying, boy, did I see a huge difference. One of them is a pet store employee, and she says, I can tell when a raw food fed dog walks in the door. Their glow is there. They're muscled much better than the kibble fed dogs, and 2 or 3 other things. She can just tell by looking at them that they're raw fed. So give it a try if you haven't done it. Like I said, enhancement can be as simple as cracking a raw egg over that healthy kibble or adding some raw hamburger to it. Start there and gradually learn how to make more of your raw food. Wanda also observes raw feeding rocks, no flea, no tick or mosquito poison. We never go to the vet. That's what I'm talking about. You spend maybe a little more on the food or not, depending on how you source it, and your vet bills go down, especially if you learn what I'm teaching you about vaccines and how they're not due when they say they're due. So pay attention to that as well. Teresa says Nature's Pharmacy with an F has some good products. What else do you guys recommend or have you seen for animals who are eating kibble to enhance that kibble? Tell me that in the chat. Shauna says, I feed my dog RX Biotic Probiotic, but it's hard to get in Canada. Yeah, let me just add this thing in here. Wysong makes a thing called Add Life by Wysong. That's a good one. There's probiotics, there's natural source vitamins and minerals, and there's enzymes, all in one shaker can that you just shake on the food. Susan says, what about grinding the bones raw versus just giving the whole bone? You can certainly do that, Susan. Some people will do what's called a whole grind, where they'll grind the meat and a bit of organ and the bone together. And people will guide you on how to do that. It's fine. One way or another, an important takeaway that I want everybody to know who's not doing raw is meat in itself is very imbalanced. So think about the prey model. The wolf comes on the caribou, takes the caribou down, does not just eat the muscles and leave, right? It's going to eat some organs. Actually, that's often the first thing consumed. Going to eat some organs. And they're going to chew some bones. So they're getting calcium from the bones, which is not very present in meat at all. So a way to have a very imbalanced raw food fed dog is just meat. You don't want to do that. Nate says, I see people sometimes adding broccoli, blueberries, coconut oil, sardines, and water, non-salt. Yeah, yep. Just keep the veggies kind of low. I don't think any more than 10% should be veggies for the average dog. They are built on the carnivore model. That's why you see those canine teeth. That's why you see those tearing teeth in the back. The molars are all kind of sharp like this, unlike ours that are grinders. Amy says, I use a cheese grater to grate zucchini, squash, broccoli, cauliflower. Cool. You want to get it really macerated up. Another way to do it might be to throw them in a Vitamix or one of those really powerful blenders with a little bit of water. Buzz it so it's really torn to pieces, and then add a little of that to the food you're feeding. So that's another good point. You can enhance kibble if you've got a good, healthy kibble of your choosing, where you've done your label detective work. You can also enhance it by adding some greens, maybe zucchini or some squash, maybe some dark greens like kale buzzed up, but always macerated so it's torn apart. They don't have great digestive systems. They're short compared to ours for digesting vegetation. Nate, it says fresh shredded turmeric. Wow, that's pretty exotic. Lisa says raw goat milk, and she likes to use Answer's pet food. They use a lot of raw goat milk, including kefir, so that's a good choice as well. Kefir, of course, is cultured milk, better than yogurt in the sense that it's got 4 or 5 or more different bacteria and some friendly yeasts. So that's a real good idea. Thanks for that. Terry says, I don't do raw, although I cook only organic meats, steam organic veggies, and fresh fruits for snacks. That's fine, Terry. It's especially helpful in dogs with weak digestive systems to do some cooking. So the seniors sometimes don't do well on raw. And I suspect if we ever get deeper into Ayurvedic medicine with dogs, there'll be some constitutions that don't do well with raw. I, for instance, am not a raw food eater. It doesn't suit my constitution. Janet, steaming vegetables is fine. Yeah, we want to break them down some way or another. Steaming is one way, macerating is another, grating is another. What you want to look for in the stool is you're not seeing pieces of carrot coming through or pieces of green leafy stuff coming through in the stool of your dog. If that's there, it means they haven't digested it. They've just passed it through. They weren't able to break it down. So good questions. You guys are on the thinking world here. Wanda says bone broth and kefir. Cool. What else would you enhance a healthy kibble with? Patty says, can kefir be made with other milk than with goats? Absolutely, Patty. Some make it with coconut water, in fact. So cow's milk is fine. The ideal milk is going to be raw. If you can find a source of raw milk and then culture it, you don't even have to heat it to make kefir. Room temperature is one of kefir's benefits. You guys are smart. Janet says that she used to see carrots in her backyard before she steamed the carrots. So there's a lesson for you. Raw carrots in chunks go right through. You'll see them on the dog's stool. Means they weren't digested. Now that she's steaming them, they're getting digested. Ooh, Amy's got some cool ideas. Let me pop this one up there. Amy says, we also make smoothie with stuff like kale, spinach, and sardines. Freeze it in ice cube trays and then thaw individual servings. How cool is that, right? You got a chunk of something healthy. Just remember to stick it out. Don't feed it frozen. Stick it out and let it come to room temperature. And that's a great enhancement for a healthy kibble. Very good idea. You can do a similar thing with raw food, of course. Is you can, people that are making raw food oftentimes put it in packets in the freezer, individual serving size packets. So great idea. Nate adds to Answer's formula, 10% veggies like spinach, ginger, or turmeric as a topper. Ginger might be a little hot, so I'd go easy on it, but it's a big digestive aid. Dessert is Answer's goat milk and fish stock. Wow, those are happy dogs, Nate. Wendy says, if a veggie gets steamed, won't all the benefits get cooked out? Yes and no. Wendy. So what's still there when it's cooked is the good color chemicals, the what are they called? Porphyrins and such things. The ORAC, whatever that stands for, those are good things to add. And what we gain from the steaming is a breakdown of the cells. So the cell walls are broken down enough to digest and get that goodness from the highly colored vegetables in. And the fiber is still intact. So it's a good source of fiber to help buffer the bowel movement, help it go through. Rosemary Lyons likes her Instant Pot for cooking her meat and veggies together. Yeah, people have used the Instant Pot also for doing the bone broth, if you guys are into bone broth. Wanda says, what do I think of duck legs, beef short ribs, lamb shanks as raw meaty bones? All of the above, yeah, depending on the size of the dog. Bigger dogs like yours, Bugatti, lamb shanks, really good meaty bone. Buffalo and beef marrow bones too, you bet. All good stuff. All right, so let's take a final look here. 2 experimental models. This is the one I did with you guys present, and you can see it's pretty liquid. But I'm going to show you the real winner, which has had about an hour's more time than this. This is now going to pour out of the thing. Remember, this was just oats and water and a tiny bit of enzymes added to it. So that's now pretty pourable. That means the enzymes broke down all the bonds that were making it stick and allow me to turn it upside down. If I turned it upside down now, I'd have a mess on my desk. Here's the one that had about an hour on the other one. So over time, these enzymes work. This one is damn near a soup. Let's just show you that real quick. That also was turned upside downable, and it could not, it would not fall out. Now it's like a soup. Okay? So that's the magic trick for today. I'm going to leave you with that one. Go get some enzymes if you're feeding kibble. Enzymes and probiotics. Shake them onto that kibble. Follow some of these ideas like adding some raw goodies to it. Crack an egg over it. And do visit me at the workshop, which is free. We're on video number 2, and there's 2 more to come. vitalanimal.com/fool. If you haven't already, share this with folks. Beep, beep. There we go. And let them know that there's some good ideas here. And this chat and this recording will be saved, of course. So it'll be on the Vital Animal Pack Facebook page. And you can refer to it and send people to it as time goes by. So we're going to do this one more time. Thank you all for coming. I appreciate each and every one of you. I know whatever you're doing, you're working toward getting down that natural path further. So that's where we want to take our animals. More natural, more healthy, more glowing, more vital. Thanks, everybody. See you next time. We're probably going to do this next weekend. So stay tuned. I'll alert you. Bye for now.